Welcome to the Man Amongst Men podcast. Live a life of intentionality, adventure, and brotherhood. Take the inner journey and live out over your edge constantly. Here are your hosts, Dominic and Brian.
Well, here we are, the final installment of a three-part conversation with Daryl Davis. It's a little bit bittersweet, and we have saved some of the most provocative stuff for this final episode, so I'm glad you're tuning in. We dig into the most contentious exchange that I've seen documented anywhere online with Daryl Davis, and it's not even with Klansmen, it's with members of the Black Lives Matter community. In his documentary, Accidental Courtesy, which I believe you can download on iTunes or rent for like $2.99 or $3.99, there's this heated and contentious exchange with a few members of the Baltimore Black Lives Matter community where they exchange some really heated words, and it seems like it's going to come to blows. Daryl shares very candidly what his beliefs are on the effectiveness of the Black Lives Matter community and ability to create progress. He shares that with me. And then also what has happened in the 18 months since that heated exchange took place in the documentary. He also talks about why he believes that the Donald Trump presidency is the greatest thing to happen to the United States, even though he didn't vote for Donald Trump. And where we are going to begin is why Daryl believes that most interest groups never make an ounce of progress for the causes that they are supporting.
It seems to me that anytime an incident happens, whether it's racial or anything else controversial, say abortion, somebody blows up an abortion clinic or whatever, there's always different people who have different groups and opinions. An incident happens. Next thing you know, community comes together and they form a group. So let's say somebody painted a swastika on some synagogue in the neighborhood. Next thing you know, the neighborhood forms a little group to address anti-Semitism or whatever. And they began meeting the second Wednesday of every month. Talk about how bad anti-Semitism is in the area. What are they achieving? Nothing really, because everybody in that group agrees with one another. If you and I are in the group and I'm telling you how bad anti-Semitism is, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. What are we doing about it? Yes, it's important for us to be informed, etc. It's important that we have a like mind. But here is where we make progress. I'll come into the group and say, you know what? I know a guy who seems very anti-Semitic. He lives 5 blocks over. Why don't we invite him to our next month's Wednesday meeting? And just ask him to share with us, what he feels. Oh, no, we can't have that guy here. He hates us. Exactly. Mm-hmm. That's why we need to have him here, so we can understand why he hates us. Mm-hmm. He may have some false perceptions about us. We may have some about him. We may not achieve anything. We may achieve something. But let's invite him and hear where he's coming from and listen to him. And people say, well, I don't have time to listen to people like that. Well, you know what? Patience is indeed a virtue. And there are certain things that we can blow off and ignore. If you catch a cold, it's a common cold, you can blow it off. You don't have to go to the doctor. A week later, it's gone. If you got a headache a few minutes from now, you wait a couple hours, it's gone. All right, you can ignore it. No need to return to the emergency room. So certain things we can blow off. In school, in grade school, little Johnny is calling you freckle face or 4 eyes or, whatever the names they call you. It hurts your feelings. You run home and tell your mom because you're crying. What does she tell you? She says, ignore him. Don't give him a reaction. That's what he's looking for. Ignore him, and he'll leave you alone. Next day you go to school, and you're in the cafeteria, and he comes over and starts calling you names. You follow your mom's advice, ignore him. Sure enough, he's not getting the reaction he wants. He moves on to somebody else, right? That works. But it doesn't work for everything. If you go to your doctor, and your doctor tells you, after your exam, listen, you're in the beginning stages of lung cancer. You've been smoking too much or whatever. You can't say, well, I'll just ignore it and go away. No. If you ignore it, it's going to metastasize and spread, and then you'll go away. all right, you must immediately address it. And at best, eradicate the cancer. At the very least, put it into remission. Racism, anti-Semitism, things like that, those are cancers. Our mom's advice doesn't work on those things. We cannot ignore them. We must address them. If you don't address racism, what happens? It metastasizes. People don't want to talk about racism. You know, keep it under the carpet, lock it in the closet, and don't talk about it. No, we have to talk about it because it's like a pressure cooker. It's going to explode, right? So invite those people with whom you have a disagreement over. You can lay down some ground rules. You know, hey, listen, we're not going to yell and scream at each other. We're going to give each other time to listen to each other. We want to hear what you have to say. Why do you despise us for being Jewish so much? Why do you despise us for being black? Why do you despise us for being Muslim or homosexual or whatever the case may be? We want to learn from you, and you're safe here. We may not agree with you, but you're safe.
One of the most startling things to me in watching Daryl's documentary, which is called Accidental Courtesy, was the fact that the most contentious exchange, the most riveting exchange, didn't happen between he and other Klansmen, rather between he and members of the Black Lives Matter community in Baltimore, where it seemed like for a moment that there were going to be fists thrown across the table. And so I asked Daryl what happened in that exchange and what has happened in the year and a half since the recording took place.
Before we started this, you mentioned a scene in the documentary where I had met with some members of Black Lives Matter. So let's talk about that for a second. Well, first, let's understand something about Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, and I'm not comparing it to the Klan, I'm just making an analogy. Like the Klan, they are separate entities. There is no Black Lives Matter Central. Okay? There's no one organization. They all are separate, autonomous Black Lives Matter groups. Okay. There are people in Detroit and groups in New York who contact me and say, hey, do you do workshops? Can you teach us how to do what you do? We want to learn. And then there are other ones, these are Black Lives Matter groups. And then there are other ones who rip me a new one. Yeah. They can't stand me.
This was exactly what was confronting
and now what you saw in that documentary was only 8 minutes, 8 or 9 minutes of this confrontation. It went on for just over an hour. Okay? It almost became physical. Okay? It became very vicious, as you saw, but even escalated beyond that. And there was some name calling and things like that. I accused them of being ignorant. They called me a pimp in a pulpit and whatever else. I know I'm not a pimp in a pulpit, so that didn't bother me. You notice I remained in my chair the whole time. They're the ones who got up and pranced around and cussed me out. They said what they had to say. They didn't want to listen to me. Get the F out of here. Don't ever come back to Baltimore. On and on and on. Let's back up for a second. When the young man, Kwame, when he first met me, it was in the parking lot where we were handing out lunch to the homeless.
Seemed cordial.
Exactly. You recall what was the first thing he said to me? He said, I understand you're the first black member of the KKK.
Right.
Well, that was based upon ignorance. Now, I don't use the term ignorance in a derogatory sense.
As an insult.
Right. I use it as unknowing, okay? He already had received false information, which he had internalized and believed. If there were blacks in the KKK, there wouldn't be a KKK. Right. Okay, so that was definitely some ignorance going on. He had not bothered to really check it out. Now, when he got to the bar and was joined by the other two gentlemen, it became almost like a gang mentality. I was there on my side, they were there on their side, and it got heated, etc.
Why did he even start with sides? Why did they even see you as being on a different side of them from the get-go?
Okay, because I'm going to tell you something. If I were just to see a picture, say, of a black man shaking hands with a hooded and robed Klansman, I'd look, and I'd have a visceral reaction. What the hell is going on here, right? But me, I turn the page over and read the backstory. Why is this happening? Oh, okay, I got it. Oh, cool. Okay, I got it now. Some people don't go that far. They see the picture, they jump to conclusions, and they make up their own mind. This guy is a sellout, he's an Uncle Tom, he's an Oreo. You know what that is?
The Oreo is black on the outside, white on the inside.
Exactly. Okay? I got called Uncle Ruckus, I got called all kinds of names. All right? They have that visceral reaction and they don't bother to read the backstory. Just like he was told, I was the first black man in the KKK. He didn't check it out. He would have found out it was not true. So already he had internalized an animus against me. And then when he got with his buddies, it was reinforced. That's what happened there. He accused me of wasting my time sitting with my Klan buddies when I should be working like them towards addressing systemic racism. And he said a white supremacist can't change. He said that a couple times. There is a systemic white supremacy in this country. Systemic racism that does exist. But who is behind the system? Human beings are. So the system is something that is not tangible. What is tangible are the people who run the system. If you can change their minds, then you influence the system. And the systemic changes, which is why a lot of people don't understand this. This country is governed not so much by the president. I don't care if it's Trump, Obama, Clinton, Bush, it doesn't matter. We are a nation of what? Laws, right? And at the very top of our laws, who sits there?
At the top of our laws, who sits there?
At the top of our judicial system, who sits there?
The Supreme Court.
Exactly, okay? That's why people are so concerned about who is appointed to the Supreme Court. It's always a fight. No one gives a rat's rear end about who's appointed to the local district court or circuit court, but they're concerned about the Supreme Court, okay? Because that's a lifetime position, and everything trickles down from the Supreme Court. Anytime somebody goes to local court, they are arguing, they're defending somebody or prosecuting somebody, and they can't find a case to make the judge go this way, they will always bring out a Supreme Court case and say, well, Your Honor, in Roe versus Wade and Brown versus the board, they always cite some Supreme Court ruling, and that judge has to go by that because that was the top. Okay? So it's important that if you want equity down here, you must have equity up there. The top judge is called a justice. There are 9 justices that sit up there. For the longest time, there were 9 white male justices, conservative. So guess what? Everything down here was conservatism, all right? Then there became one black guy, Thurgood Marshall. He made some changes, some good changes. He was a good guy. But he was not enough to compete with 8 other ones who were conservative, all right? Then we got a female judge, Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, okay? That balanced out a little bit more, okay? When you have equal amount of females, blacks, Hispanics, whatever, up there, then you're going to see equity down here.
That takes a long time.
It takes a long time. Because, you know why? Because they're not term, they're life, all right? So they die out, okay? Unless they decide they want to step down. Which is why every time a president is going to appoint a judge, everybody's freaked out, They want somebody who's going to do what they want done down here. So that's what I'm saying. You have to have equity at the top. These guys, they don't see that. When you change the minds of those people up there, those are people. They determine the systemic. So if you had 9 liberal justices, male or female, black or white, the systemic would be liberal. It would be a liberal systemic. I work on the people behind the system. They work on the system. I'm not saying that my method is better than theirs or theirs is better than mine. They want to do everything. I'm working on a small individual thing. But each one is important. All right? And we all have to work together. And the analogy that I make is this. If the people in that house, the husband and wife in that house, have an argument, you're outside or whatever, you're walking by, you hear them screaming and yelling and pots and pans flying, you call the cops, right? 2 uniformed cops are going to show up, knock on the door. They're going to go in. One's going to take the husband to that room. The other one's going to take the wife to the kitchen. And they're going to compare stories. I mean, they're going to get each other's story, come back, and they're going to compare stories. And they're going to tell them, hey, look, you all need to calm down. Whoever doesn't calm down, click, off to jail you go. If they both calm down, it's okay. You all behave yourselves. Don't make us come back, because when we come back, we're going to lock you both up. Then off they go. Everything's cool, right? But now let's say you're walking by and you hear all kinds of craziness going inside the house, and you see some guy in there with a gun. And this happens all too often. Some husband has lost his job, whatever, and he's deranged. He comes home. He's holding his wife and kids hostage. He's going to shoot them and then probably shoot himself. We hear about that all the time, right? You call the cops. This time, it's not just the 2 uniformed cops that come. Okay, they come. They're not at the front door anymore, knocking the door. They're back here with a bullhorn. Okay, telling him, hey man, let your wife go, blah, blah, blah. Another division of the police come called the SWAT team. The SWAT team, they're at your front door. They're around at your back door. They're on the side of your house, peeping in your window with their high-powered scopes, right? And they might even drop down from a helicopter on top of your roof, all right? So you got the SWAT team, you got the 2 uniformed guys, and then there's another guy from the police department. He's on the phone calling you inside the house saying, hey, listen, just calm down. We'll get you some help. Everything will be okay. Let one of your kids go. Just let one of your kids walk out the door. This is the hostage negotiator, right? Yeah. Each one of these people are working for the common goal of freeing those hostages at any cost. If the 2 uniformed guys with the bullhorn get you to let your wife go, great. If the hostage negotiator gets you to give it up, great. The sharpshooter from the SWAT team, if he gets a bullseye on you and he can shoot you right in between the eyes without hitting one of the kids or the wife, you're dead, you're gone. The main goal is to free those hostages. And each one of them are in concert, connected to each other. They're working. They all matter, and they all are working together. And that's what I had to impress upon those people. Don't down me for what I'm doing. Maybe you can't do what I do, and I got that, okay? But this is where I'm focusing. You continue focusing on what you're doing, marching back and forth in front of the police department with your bullhorns and calling them out and whatever else. That's fine. It all needs to be done. So, upside of that, you saw what happened in that video. About a year and a half later, they reached out to me. I said, hey, let's get together and have dinner and talk. They reached out to you now? Yeah. And extended out all 3 of them? Tarek could not make it. At the time he was in school, I believe, to become an imam. Okay, he's studying religion, the Muslim faith, Islam. So Kwame and JC and I met up in Baltimore. We had dinner together. We talked, and a lot of things we agreed upon. So a few things we did not agree upon, whatever. But we had a nice civil conversation, and we agreed we have to work together. And they told me, they now understand me a little bit better. Yeah, man. And that's what it takes. That conversation should have happened when we first met. Yep. It didn't. But over time, and if I didn't have the patience, that never would have happened. Yeah. Okay? So I was happy to meet with them. I liked them. Basically, I liked them that day. I didn't like some of the things they were saying, but I liked them as human beings, and I understood where they were coming from. They've never been to a Klan rally. They know about them. I've been there. I know about it. They've never interacted with people that I've interacted with. I know white supremacists who have changed. Here's the funny thing. If they didn't believe that a white supremacist could change, then they're wasting their time even protesting. Well, what's the point? Mm-hmm. Because they're protesting white supremacy. Yeah. So if nobody can change, you might as well just relegate yourself back to slavery or something.
Well, I think there's this belief that you could just stomp out the other side. Like you can annihilate them and go away I'm not even interested in changing. Let's just defeat them all together.
Right, it's the racial war. Yeah, exactly.
If you haven't figured it out by now, Daryl has a way with words, and that gift is going to be on full display in this next segment where he talks about why Donald Trump is the greatest thing that's ever happened to the United States of America, and his candid thoughts on the effectiveness of the Black Lives Matter movement.
I did not support Donald Trump in the election, but I do feel that he is the best thing that happened to this country.
Right. Yeah, tell us why.
Because not through any design of his own, He is breaking the backbone of this country. And the example that I'll give you is if you go skiing or you fall down a flight of stairs and you fracture a bone, you go get it x-rayed and the doctor says, well, surgeon, the way this fracture is, I can't make it heal on its own with a splint or a cast or whatever. I'm going to have to break the bone and reset it to make it heal properly. We've all heard of those things before, right? That's what Donald Trump is doing. Not by any design of his own, okay? But he'll take credit for it if it works. Okay, so he's breaking the backbone of this country. This country was built as a two-tier society, white supremacy and black people. Over the years, this never happened. It moved up, but like this, okay? Not like this.
Got it.
Okay? So when the bone is broken, we all are here. And then it's set, everybody is on ground floor. And we all ride the elevator up together now. So now we have to depend upon each other.
Yeah, like he's provided a much needed intervention with conscious design that evens the playing field.
Exactly, precisely.
But there's a long mending period.
There is a long mending period, but you said it better than I could ever say it. You were exactly right on that. I think the idea behind Black Lives Matter is a great idea. It was a great idea. The idea of it by the founders, as I understand it, was to put the national spotlight on the plight of black men in particular, who, for lack of a better word, were being murdered by white police officers for holding a cell phone, for holding a wallet, whereby white men in the same predicament either got to go home or go to jail. We got to go to our graves. Whether we're innocent or guilty, we're dead. So by putting the national spotlight on it, people begin to be educated about it, and hopefully things will change. The idea came, of course, from what Martin Luther King did with Rosa Parks, putting the national spotlight on the plight of these riders on the Montgomery, Alabama bus lines. Rosa Parks was not the first person to refuse to give up her seat on the bus. That had happened before, but the national spotlight wasn't on it. So when that happened and the boycott was all spotlighted on national news, that's when things changed. The problem that Black Lives Matter has, they did not centralize. They did not trademark the name. Now, my understanding is that that was done intentionally because they wanted to be organic. But I don't think they predicted how big it would become. There are, 70, 80 different Black Lives Matter groups all over the country. Fragmented. Some agree with each other, some don't. Some are more aggressive, some are more passive, some are more political, some are more, let's get out there and just take over kind of thing, And each one has a leader. So again, you got too many chefs in the kitchen. Like I said, there are those that call me and say, hey, how can we do what you do? And there are those who call me all kinds of names. Call me everything but my name. So when people see this fragmentation, it doesn't give it strength. There's strength in numbers and unity. Have they centralized, like the NAACP, like the ADL, like the Boy Scouts of America, or the Red Cross? These are central organizations where policy is created at headquarters and disseminated to all the chapters around the country. So no matter what chapter you go to, they're all on the same page. There is strength.
Yeah, right.
There's no strength in like I said, divide and conquer.
Yeah. And where are they today? What is it? What change has been made?
I don't know. You tell me.
It's hard to believe, but here we are at the finish line of our conversation with Daryl. What an amazing human being. And it's only fitting to give him the final word. So this is the last you're going to hear from me before we cut to Daryl's final words of wisdom. If you are interested in learning more, go to YouTube, type in TEDx Talks Daryl Davis. I think he's got 4, maybe even 5 TEDx Talks right now. Start with why I, as a black man, attend KKK rallies. That's how I began, and then you can go down the rabbit hole with the rest. And then his documentary, which is called Accidental Courtesy, is must-see. It may have been available on Netflix at one time. Check it out, maybe Prime Video or Hulu. I know that I ended up seeing it on iTunes, $2.99 or $3.99 rent. I mean, it's well worth your money. If you found this to be as enlightening as I did, then let me know what your best questions are, because Daryl did say that he would give us a round 2 to ask more questions. And so equip me with the things that I didn't ask, the things that you're curious about, what you would want to dig deeper on. And in the meantime, here's Daryl's final words of wisdom. It has been an honor and a privilege to share this with you. And please let me know if you found this to be as compelling as I did.
When these incidents happen and you see these groups being formed, forming that group of like-minded people is great. But don't stop there. Invite the opposition to your table. Give them a seat at your table and listen to them and try to understand where they're coming from. Give them the opportunity to present their platform. And if you listen, there's an excellent chance that they will reciprocate and give you the opportunity to present your platform. This is how progress is made, because when two enemies are talking, they're not fighting. They're talking. When the conversation ceases, the ground becomes fertile for violence. So you want to keep the conversation going.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Man Amongst Men podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you want more access to tools and resources, and you want information on our upcoming live events and retreats, head on over to www.doinnerwork.com.